So after all this time, we finally got it. We finally got the Wonder Woman movie. We've been waiting so long for this movie. There was a lot of anticipation behind this movie because at this point, DC can't take any more blows. They gotta fix it. They gotta fix what they did. Were they successful? Hell yes. Finally, there's a film by DC that we could all come together and say, wow, that was actually a pretty damn good movie. Probably the best DC Cinematic Universe movie yet. I really like Man of Steel, but a lot of people didn't, and I understand why. But this movie for me is slightly better than Man of Steel. As soon as this movie started, I instantly loved this movie than the last two DC films because there was some beautiful colors on screen when they were in the Amazon. It looked beautiful. Gal Gadot, now I was really worried about her casting choice. I was worried since a long time ago. I was one of the haters that said, I think she's a little too skinny. But my opinion started changing once I started seeing the trailers. Once I saw the movie though, I completely understand now what this new rendition of Wonder Woman is. Gal Gadot, she may be thin, but she's tall. She's really tall compared to everyone around her, so she really stands out and she really does feel really powerful. When she's going through people and she's like knocking people out and stabbing people and throwing people against the fucking wall, it's intense. It looks like she's doing some real damage to these people. And that's one of my favorite parts about this movie. The action sequences are all phenomenal. This movie does rely on the CGI a lot, but it makes it look really nice. It does get CGI heavy the last third of the film. Some people may have not liked that, but I actually really like that. And I don't want to say what happens, but I think the build up until that over the top CGI moment was great. I loved it. So by the time it came to the CGI fest and shit was just going off the rails, I loved it because by that point I was ready. I was in the mood to see this. The movie builds it up perfectly. I feel like the pacing in this movie, even though it is a bit long and at some points it might feel like it drags a little bit, it doesn't get to the point where you're ever bored. This rendition of Wonder Woman is very innocent, very naive, and very curious. But what stands out is just how good she is and how much of a good heart she has and how innocent she really is. And that's another thing I really love about this movie that the other DC Cinematic Universe movies have lacked, and that's a real character development. Diana, she comes in completely different than she comes out. Her relationship with Steve Trevor, with Chris Pine, going into it, I thought that I was going to be annoyed by their relationship because I thought it was going to be too cliche. And yeah, it has its moments. You actually really feel for them and you really feel their relationship grow, and it grows at a steady pace. When things get intimate, it doesn't feel awkward because you spend all this time with them that it makes sense that she would do something like that or he would do something like that. Chris was amazing in this movie. I was so glad. I really thought they chose him just because he's a very hot man. But I realized not only did they choose him because he's a very handsome man, but because he's actually fucking talented, and he worked well with Gal Gadot's innocence. They make nice and consistent jokes. They're subtle and they're not too much in your face, and I appreciate that. The villains were a little bit underdeveloped. Dr. Poison and her friend were kind of a little, felt like a 60s Batman TV show moment. Thought they were a little bit too cheesy, but Dr. Poison, I thought she looked really cool though, honestly. Like the little kid in me thought she looked freaking badass, and the whole moment she has at the end, it's awesome. I love the way that Wonder Woman slowly progresses and slowly realizes the extent of her powers, and by the end of the movie you really feel like we went on this journey with her to discover her full extent. By this point we think we've seen all the origin movies, but this origin movie does something different, and I like that a lot. One other complaint that I had, that's not really a complaint but just something I noticed, I thought going into this movie that this movie was gonna be for like little girls to see, but to be honest, this movie is not for little kids. The movie gets really violent, and also it gets kind of sexual at times, but not awkwardly sexual. It's just like the sexual tension between her and Steve Trevor. It's present, but it's not too much. But I think it's a little too much for kids. That's why it surprised me. But it's not really a complaint because DC's trying to make these more darker toned movies, and I think this darker toned style really worked in this movie because not only is it in World War one, this is what really Wonder Woman would go through. She's never encountered a man before. I mean, she had to be curious at one point. It just threw me off that it's not for girls. It's more so like teenagers, but it's still fucking badass though to see that now teenage girls can look at this and be like, you know what? Fuck being a princess. Where the fuck my gauntlets at? Also, one more thing. On the action sequences when she uses her gauntlets, man, that's fucking badass. Also, the way they use her lasso, I was worried, like, how could they ever make the lasso of truth not be corny as hell? And they did it. It's funny as hell every time they use it, but not overly funny like some Marvel movies where I just get pissed off when there's supposed to be a serious moment. I love this movie. I'm gonna go take my mom see it tomorrow. I'd say, hey, you're gonna take a little girl, make sure she's with her mom and let her know that, you know, don't be so violent. You know, I love it. I give it an 8.5. I can't wait to see what the DC Universe will do next. I really hope Justice League will be good now. I hope they learned, and I can't wait to see what Aquaman has in store. But, alright. Later!